Hello. The moment that changed everything was so mundane. I was using Sarah's laptop to check our joint wedding registry since mine was being repaired. That's when I noticed she'd left her Facebook Messenger open. I'm not usually the type to snoop, but a message preview caught my eye. It was from her ex, Brandon. Last night was amazing. I've missed being with you so much. My hands started shaking as I scrolled up through their conversation history. What I found made me physically sick. Sarah, my fiancée of 2 years, had been sleeping with Brandon for the past 4 months. The messages were explicit, detailing their meetups at his apartment while I was working late at the firm. They even had sex in our bed when I was away at a conference in Boston. But what hurt the most wasn't the physical betrayal. It was how they laughed about me, calling me clueless and too trusting. The irony? Just last week, Sarah had thrown a fit when I mentioned grabbing lunch with my colleague Jessica, accusing me of having feelings for her. She'd even made me promise to limit my interactions with Jessica at work. Now I understood why Sarah was projecting her own guilt onto me. I kept reading, my anger building with each message. They had been high school sweethearts, and apparently, Brandon had reached out to her after his divorce. Sarah had always insisted they were just friends, that I was being insecure whenever I questioned their frequent texting. She'd even convinced me to invite him to our upcoming wedding, saying it would be weird, not to since they shared so many mutual friends. The messages revealed their little game, how they'd hook up every Thursday when I had my late meetings, how they'd delete their messages afterward, how they had inside jokes about me. There was even a message from Sarah saying she was only marrying me because I was stable and good on paper, while Brandon was her true love, but too unreliable to build a life with. I gathered screenshots of everything, my lawyer brain kicking in even through the shock. Then I did something that surprised even me. I texted Jessica. Yes, the same Jessica that Sarah had been so jealous of. The woman who Sarah had spread vicious rumors about at office parties, calling her a homewrecker and attention seeker. The woman who Sarah had tried to get fired by complaining to HR about her inappropriate work attire. Are you free for coffee? I need someone to talk to. Jessica responded immediately. Of course. Is everything okay? I stared at my phone, a plan already forming in my mind. Sarah had made my life hell for even speaking to Jessica. Well, I was about to give her a reason to really hate us both. Jessica and I met at a quiet cafe across town, far from our office and any of Sarah's usual haunts. As I showed her the screenshots, her face went through a range of emotions: shock, anger, and finally, a glimmer of something else I couldn't quite read. Turns out, Sarah's vendetta against Jessica went deeper than I'd known. There's something you should know, Jessica said, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. Sarah didn't just try to get me fired. She's been systematically trying to ruin my reputation for the past year. She told everyone at work that I was sleeping with married executives. She even contacted my ex-boyfriend's new wife with proof that I was trying to break up their marriage. My mind flashed back to all the times Sarah had painted herself as the victim, claiming Jessica was out to get her. Classic projection. Sarah had been the manipulator all along. Jessica pulled out her phone and showed me dozens of anonymous messages she'd received, all traceable back to Sarah's email accounts. Why didn't you report her? I asked. Jessica's bitter laugh said it all. Who would believe me? Sarah's got everyone wrapped around her finger. She's the perfect fiancée planning her dream wedding, and I'm just the office slut who supposedly hits on other women's men. The more we talked, the more the pieces fell into place. Sarah's obsession with Jessica wasn't just about jealousy. It was about control. She'd needed an enemy to distract me from her own infidelity. And Jessica, with her striking looks and genuine personality, had been the perfect target. We stayed at that cafe for hours, sharing stories and revelations. Jessica told me about other women Sarah had targeted, all while maintaining her innocent facade. The pattern was always the same. She'd befriend them, learn their secrets, then use that information to manipulate situations to her advantage. As the evening wore on, our conversation shifted from Sarah's betrayal to other things. The chemistry between Jessica and me had always been there, but we'd both respected boundaries. Now, with several drinks in our systems and years of Sarah's manipulation exposed, those boundaries felt less important. You know what would drive her absolutely insane? Jessica said, a dangerous glint in her eye. If her worst nightmare came true, I knew exactly what she meant. Sarah had spent years spreading rumors about Jessica and me, terrorizing her with accusations of trying to steal me away. The ultimate revenge would be making those rumors reality. It was petty, it was probably wrong, but in that moment it felt like perfect justice. My place or yours? I asked, already knowing this was going to change everything. What happened next was a blur of heated kisses, tangled sheets, and the kind of passionate sex that only comes from years of repressed attraction finally breaking free. Jessica knew exactly how to touch me, how to make me forget about Sarah's betrayal, if only for a few hours. And I discovered that Sarah's jealousy hadn't been completely unfounded. Jessica and I had an undeniable connection that went beyond physical attraction. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Sarah and a text asking where I was. She was keeping up her perfect fiancé act, probably fresh from another rendezvous with Brandon. I looked at Jessica sleeping peacefully beside me and felt no guilt. Sarah had created this situation with her lies and manipulation. Now she was going to learn that karma has a wicked sense of humor. The next few days were a masterclass in watching Sarah's carefully constructed world start to crumble. I returned home that morning to find her making breakfast as if nothing was wrong. But there was a nervous energy about her that I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I was just finally seeing clearly. Where were you last night? She asked, trying to sound casual while flipping pancakes. I was worried. Had a late meeting, I replied, using her own excuse against her. Must have lost track of time. Her hand trembled slightly as she set down the spatula. This was new. Usually, she was an expert at maintaining her composure. But something in my tone must have worried her. She spent the next hour hovering around me, being overly affectionate, asking about wedding details with forced enthusiasm. I let her perform her loving fiancé act while secretly watching her reactions. Every time her phone buzzed, she'd flinch slightly. Twice, she left the room to answer texts, coming back with slightly smudged lipstick. I knew she was messaging Brandon, probably arranging another meetup, blissfully unaware that I knew everything. The breaking point came that evening. Sarah was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when she suddenly sat up straight, her face draining of color. I knew exactly why. I just posted a photo on Instagram of my late-night meeting. It was innocent enough. Just a coffee cup and some papers on a cafe table. But I deliberately included Jessica's distinctive bracelet at the edge of the frame. You were with her? Sarah's voice was deadly quiet. With who? I kept my tone neutral, watching her struggle to maintain control. Don't play dumb. You were with that slut Jessica, weren't you? Her mask was slipping, showing the ugliness beneath. After everything I told you about her? I let the silence stretch out, enjoying how it made her squirm. You mean after all the lies you told about her? Sarah's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, fear, anger, and finally, an attempt at innocence. What are you talking about? You know what she's like, how she goes after taken men. I was just trying to protect our relationship. Like you protected it with Brandon? The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. What? Don't bother denying it. I've seen all the messages, Sarah. Every single one. The Thursday meetups, the conference weekend. All of it. She switched tactics so fast it was almost impressive. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached for my hand. Baby, I can explain. Brandon means nothing to me. It was a mistake. I was feeling insecure, and he took advantage of that. You know you're the only one I truly love. I pulled my hand away. Save the performance. I know about the other lies too. How you've been systematically trying to destroy Jessica's reputation. How you've been manipulating everyone around us. How you're only marrying me because I'm stable. The tears dried up instantly, replaced by something cold and calculating. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. Screenshots, email traces, witness statements. You've been sloppy, Sarah. Too convinced of your own cleverness to cover your tracks properly. She stood up, switching to anger now that manipulation wasn't working. So what if I slept with Brandon? At least he understands me. At least he doesn't bore me to death with his perfect, predictable life. And Jessica? She deserves everything I did to her. The way she looks at you, how she's always trying to get your attention. You mean like how you look at Brandon? How you're always trying to get his attention? Sarah grabbed her wine glass and hurled it against the wall. You're just like all the others, weak, easily manipulated. I thought you were different, but you're pathetic. Running to that whore the minute things get hard. I couldn't help but laugh. The minute things get hard? You've been cheating on me for months, Sarah. Planning our wedding while sleeping with your ex, making me invite him to be a guest at our wedding. And you have the nerve to call me pathetic. Did you sleep with her? Sarah's voice was trembling with rage. Did you fuck Jessica? I stood up, gathering my keys. You know what? I did. And you want to know the best part? She was right about everything. About you, about us, about all of it. And she was so much better than you. Sarah's reaction to my confession about Jessica was nuclear. She lunged at me, all pretense of sophistication gone, scratching and screaming like a wounded animal. I caught her wrists before she could reach my face, and in that moment, looking into her eyes, I saw something that chilled me, not just anger or hurt, but a deep, calculating malice. You've just ruined everything, she hissed, yanking her hands away. I'm going to destroy you both. I couldn't help but laugh. With what, Sarah? The same tactics you've been using on Jessica? Go ahead. Tell everyone I cheated. Tell them I'm the bad guy. But remember, I have proof of everything you've done. Every message with Brandon. Every fake email account you created. Every lie you've told. She grabbed her phone, fingers flying over the screen. Within minutes, my own phone started buzzing continuously. Our friends and family members messaging me, asking what was going on. Sarah had posted a tearful Instagram story about catching me cheating, playing the devastated fiancé to perfection. But I was prepared for this. While she was crafting her social media performance, I was sending out the screenshots I'd collected. First to her parents, who had always treated me like a son. Then to our closest friends, who had watched her spin lies about Jessica for months. Finally, to Brandon's ex-wife, who deserved to know why her marriage had really ended. The reactions came in waves. First disbelief, then anger, then a flood of revelations as people started comparing notes. It turned out Sarah's manipulation went far deeper than even I had known. She'd been playing all of us against each other for years, creating drama and then positioning herself as the innocent victim. That night, as Sarah locked herself in our bedroom making frantic phone calls, I packed a bag and headed to a hotel. I had one more card to play, but timing was crucial. The next morning was Thursday, Sarah's regular meetup day with Brandon. I knew she'd run to him after this, seeking comfort and validation. What she didn't know was that Brandon's ex-wife had already reached out to me with some interesting information. It seems Brandon hadn't been entirely honest with Sarah either. His divorce wasn't final. He and his wife were actually in counseling, trying to work things out. He'd been playing Sarah just as much as she'd been playing me, feeding her dreams of rekindling their great romance while having no intention of leaving his wife. I spent the night with Jessica, not just for sex this time, but for genuine connection. We talked for hours about everything we'd both experienced at Sarah's hands. Jessica shared stories of other women who'd reached out to her, all victims of Sarah's manipulations. Together, we crafted a plan that would ensure Sarah could never hurt either of us again. Are you sure you want to do this? Jessica asked, tracing patterns on my chest as we lay in bed. Once we set this in motion, there's no going back. I thought about all the nights I'd spent working late at the office, trusting Sarah, defending her against any criticism. I thought about how she'd systematically tried to isolate me from friends who might see through her act. I thought about her smug certainty that she could always control the narrative. She made her choice, I replied, pulling Jessica closer. Now it's time for her to face the consequences. The next morning, while Sarah was presumably with Brandon, I put our plan into action. It started with a simple email to our entire office, CCing the HR department. Subject line: Evidence of workplace harassment and defamation. Attached were all the documents proving Sarah's campaign against Jessica, including the fake email accounts and malicious rumors. But that was just the beginning. The real bombshell would come later that afternoon, when Sarah would discover that her perfectly orchestrated world was about to implode in ways she never saw coming. The final act of our revenge played out like a perfectly choreographed dance, with Sarah unwittingly taking every step we'd anticipated. While my email to HR was causing chaos at the office, Jessica and I set up the endgame at a high-end restaurant downtown. The same one where Sarah had first introduced me to Brandon as her old friend. We knew Sarah's routine by now. Every Thursday after meeting Brandon, she'd stop at this restaurant's bar for a glass of wine, basking in the thrill of her secret life. Today would be different. Today, she'd walk in to find me sitting there with Jessica, Brandon's wife Rachel, and 3 other women whose lives she tried to destroy over the years. The look on her face when she saw us was worth every moment of pain she'd caused. She froze in the doorway, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the flash of panic in her eyes. But Sarah was nothing if not adaptable within seconds. She'd plastered on a sympathetic smile and started walking toward our table. "Well, if it isn't the happy couple," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Couldn't wait to flaunt your affair publicly?" Rachel stood up then, and I watched the color drain from Sarah's face. "Actually," Rachel said, "we're here to thank you. If you hadn't been sleeping with my husband, I might never have discovered what a manipulative person he is, or what a piece of work you are." Sarah's eyes darted around the table, taking in each face. Besides Rachel, there was Amanda, whose promotion she'd sabotaged, Lily, whose engagement she'd deliberately ruined with false allegations, and Maria, whose catering business she'd nearly destroyed with fake reviews when they refused to give her a free wedding package. "What is this, some kind of intervention?" Sarah laughed, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Are you all so bitter about your sad little lives that you need to gang up on me?" Jessica pulled out her phone and started playing a recording. Brandon's voice filled the air. "You know I'm not leaving Rachel, right? This is just fun for me. You're convenient, Sarah, but you're not exactly wife material." Sarah lunged for the phone, but Rachel blocked her path. "Oh, there's more," Rachel said. "Brandon recorded everything. Every meetup, every conversation. He thought he might need insurance if you ever tried to tell me about the affair. Turns out, he was right to be paranoid." "You think a few recordings will hurt me?" Sarah sneered, but her hands were shaking. "I'll just tell everyone you edited them. No one will believe you over me." That's when I played my final card. "Actually, they already do. Check your phone, Sarah." She pulled out her phone, and we all watched as her facade crumbled. The HR email had been forwarded to every contact in her professional network. The screenshots of her messages with Brandon had been sent to every wedding vendor she'd booked. Her private Instagram account, where she documented her afternoons with Brandon through thinly veiled posts, had been made public and tagged to all our mutual friends. But the coup de grace was the cease and desist letter from my law firm's top defamation attorney, detailing every false allegation she'd made against Jessica and others, with documented evidence of her harassment campaigns. One wrong move, and she'd be facing not just social humiliation but legal consequences. "You can't do this to me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll tell everyone what you did with Jessica. I'll ruin you both." "Go ahead," Jessica said calmly. "The difference is we're not hiding anything. We got together after I discovered your cheating. Everything's documented, time-stamped, and verified. You, on the other hand," she gestured to the women around the table. "Well, let's just say your pattern of behavior speaks for itself." Sarah's mask finally shattered completely. In the middle of one of the city's most expensive restaurants, she began screaming obscenities, accusing us all of conspiring against her, threatening lawsuits and revenge. As security led her out, I could still hear her yelling about how we'd all regret this. I looked around the table at these women, each of whom had suffered because of Sarah's manipulations. There was no celebration in their eyes, just quiet satisfaction that justice had finally been served. Rachel raised her glass in a toast. To karma, she said, and to trusting our instincts about toxic people. Later that night, as Jessica and I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. Sarah showed up at my house. Rachel's serving her with a restraining order tomorrow.
No regrets.
Jessica asked, noticing my thoughtful expression. I pulled her closer, thinking about how Sarah's betrayal had inadvertently led me to something real and honest. Only that I didn't see through her sooner. Thank you for listening the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next videos. Bye.